Selected 1. They believe that by concealing those private discussions about you, they could continue their deceptive campaign in the background for all time, whispering poison into every ear they could while you were unaware of their well-planned assault. However, every falsehood they spread, every secret they divulged, and every individual they enlisted to bring you down were all contributing to the most spectacular public exposure and karmic devastation you have ever seen. Their total destruction was sparked by the very secrecy that they used to shield their plan. They're now dealing with a karmic crisis and public scrutiny that will make them regret ever knowing your name. Consider this individual. We'll refer to them as the architect. They have been keeping an eye on you for months or perhaps years. Not because they adore you, but because they are afraid of what you stand for. They have researched your connections, your tendencies, and your weaknesses. They're not working alone either. Right from the start, the architect knew who to contact. That buddy who has always had certain insecurities. The relative who doubts everything. The coworker who is a bit too fond of gossip. Their list was extensive, and you'll quickly learn how vast their network actually was. They presented themselves as the knowledgeable counselor, the worried buddy, and the one who just cares about what's best for everyone. They were getting paid for some of these calls, which is when things start to become very dark. Every exchange was a masterful maneuver. They would thread in the poison after revealing just enough truth to be believable. They would raise doubts with naive inquiries. They would offer insights that reframed your advantages as disadvantages. You seem a little too confident these days. Your accomplishment. I question whether they're telling the truth about how they arrived. Isn't your spiritual development becoming a bit too profound? The architect ensured that all conversations concluded in the same manner. Keep this between us, please. I don't want to start a fight. Just that statement should have raised suspicions, since what follows will reveal how many individuals heard those precise words. They were recording everything in the meanwhile. Screenshots of your social media postings, information about your daily schedule, and details on your personal and professional relationships and tasks. They weren't only spreading rumors about you. They were spying. One discussion turned into two. Two became five. Five turned into a web that was longer than you could have ever guessed. You will also be rendered speechless by the startling reality of the sheer number of participants. Unaware that they were being played, the members of your group began comparing notes. Each person received somewhat different facts, fears, and reasons to be concerned about you from the architect. Like an unwelcome star in a twisted soap opera, they were running several storylines at once. Your best buddy became aware of your lack of active listening during chats. Your colleagues started to wonder if you were truly deserving of the promotion. Your relative began to question whether you had deteriorated. Your neighbor began monitoring your guests. Yes, this campaign even recruited your neighbor. Since they were all getting the same programming, none of them noticed that they were all thinking the same things. Every suspicion about you was magnified and reinforced in the psychological echo chamber that the architect had constructed. The architect's plan was beautiful because it was invisible. You were unable to name a specific discussion or instance. You were unable to provide any hard evidence. People seemed to be waiting for you to make a mistake, and you could feel the change, the cooling of connections, and the imperceptible distancing. In the meantime, the architect publicly presented themselves as your staunchest ally. When others attacked you, they would noisily defend you, which would be the ideal cover for their own campaign. Their approach relied heavily on this dual function, which is now poised to be their greatest weakness. You are unaware that some of these talks were taped by individuals who were beginning to feel uneasy about the tasks they were being expected to perform, rather than by the architect. There was mounting evidence and an impending reckoning that would reveal all. Your spiritual antenna has now been tuned in as a chosen one. Even when you were unable to pinpoint the cause of the dissonance, you started to notice it. The mental attacks were coming at you from several angles at once, and your energy field was picking them up. Talk seemed pointless. The vitality of people was not reflected in their speech. All of a sudden, friends who had previously sought your counsel had better alternatives. Once celebrating family members began concentrating on your shortcomings. Formerly enthusiastic coworkers suddenly appeared reluctant, to cooperate with you. You discovered that you had to be cautious, rethink your statements, and tone down your voice to please other people. The self-assured, strong person you had become began to revert to old tendencies of self-doubt and people-pleasing. With joy, the architect saw this change. They were succeeding with their strategy. You were losing light. Your self-assurance was faltering. Your connections were breaking down. They believed they were winning. They made a crucial error in judgment. They undervalued the strength of the heavenly shield that envelopes those who are chosen, like you. And they certainly didn't expect their own supporters to turn against them. In fact, under hardship, your spiritual gifts were growing stronger. Instead of becoming duller, your intuition was becoming more acute. You were getting superhuman at spotting deceit. You were gaining an almost X-ray-like understanding of people's actual intentions. You'll need it more than ever shortly. It wasn't only social assaults. They had a lot of energy. The architect had enlisted those who were adept at focusing negative energy on certain targets and who engaged in particular spiritual practices. Your body was sensing that you were being attacked on several levels. Sleep disruptions, stomach problems, and inexplicable exhaustion. It wasn't a coincidence. You were unaware that this process involved the exchange of money. The architect was not only a jealous manipulator. They had a company to operate. And there was a huge uproar when people realized they had been recruited to ruin someone's image. The architect had made offers to several of the people. They presented this as protective surveillance, saying you were engaged in a dubious activity that required observation. The money was stolen by some. Others remained silent about the offer, but declined. Some feigned compliance while plotting to reveal the entire scheme. Unbeknownst to everyone, the network was extremely intricate, and it collapsed with great force. Payments to at least 7 distinct individuals during an 18-month period would ultimately be documented in bank records. Little sums that are strategically spread out to appear like real commercial dealings. They would finally be destroyed by the paper trail the architect had made. You would never have guessed that they were approaching one of your close friends, who was one of the individuals they attempted to recruit. While recording everything, this individual feigned compliance with the plan. They were gathering evidence, developing a case, and were ready to take down the entire business. If you feel the abundance of divine love in your heart, now is the time to share it. You can help spread God's blessings by clicking the Super Thanks button on YouTube and contributing $20 or more. This divine gift will touch not only your life, but also the souls of many others through this platform. Each of you has a sacred place in God's great design, and your generosity will be the fruit of our prayers. Take action now. Share your blessings to exalt His kingdom, for you were created to do even greater things in God's loving hands. May God bless you. Some startling revelations came from the money trail. This effort was not solely financed by the architect. Someone with more money and worse intentions was their benefactor. No one could have predicted the extent of the plot. And when it was all revealed, the repercussions will destroy many social groups. Truth eventually comes to light, particularly when someone's deception becomes avaricious. Because of their success, the architect became overconfident, and overconfidence leads to blunders. They began inventing tales, creating occurrences, and exaggerating their worries about you. One individual was informed that you had borrowed money and never reimbursed them. They informed someone else that you had been disparaging them behind their back. They made up a whole tale about your dubious actions at a recent party. The issue with lies is that they need flawless coordination and memory. The stories ultimately began to contradict one another as a result of the architect conducting different storylines with multiple persons. The dates were off. The specifics changed. Witnesses to non-existent occurrences. By mistake, 2 of your buddies compared notes. The chronology was off. The specifics were inconsistent. Questions began to arise. Additionally, individuals begin to recall other contradictions once they begin to question. Someone produced a screenshot from their phone that refuted the architect's assertions. Another recalled a conversation in which the architect disclosed knowledge that they claimed not to possess. The cautious house of cards began to sway. The architect was unaware that everything had been recorded by one of their hired spies. Every text message, every payment, every phone conversation, every lie. The evidence was growing. And soon everything would collapse in the most conspicuous manner imaginable. The individual collecting the evidence wasn't merely compiling data at random. Because of the architect's actions, which went beyond mere gossip to include harassment, slander, and even criminal conspiracy, they were constructing a case. The involvement of the legal system was imminent. When others began to inquire, they began to recall how all of the unfavorable stories about you appeared to originate from the same place. How the architect constantly appeared to be privy to specifics regarding events in which they were purportedly not involved. How just the proper amount of skepticism and anxiety were always present in them. During that informal coffee date, someone recalled the architect pressuring them for information. Someone else recalled how, at what should have been a professional meeting, the architect had turned the subject toward you. A third individual became aware that they had been unintentionally recruited as a spy and felt guilty about their involvement. There was no denying the trend. Message screenshots were distributed. Voice recordings were recalled. We looked at the call logs. We looked at bank statements. The meticulous record of the architect's efforts started to emerge. Your family, friends, and coworkers all began to realize how they had been duped, how their sincere worries had been turned into a weapon, how their affection for you had been perverted into mistrust, how they had become unintentional combatants in someone else's fight against you. For everybody concerned, the discovery was heartbreaking. Those who took pleasure in being excellent character assessors came to the realization that they had been totally duped. People who thought of themselves as faithful friends found out they had been betraying someone they loved. It was discovered that family members who believed they were defending you had been coerced into attacking you. Finding out how long it had been going on only made it worse. Over the course of years, the architect had been sowing doubt and mistrust. Every connection you had ever had some kind of contamination. Their venom had permeated every contact. Not all of the evidence was incriminating. It was too much. 3 years' worth of SMS messages, financial documents demonstrating information payments, phone conversations that were recorded in which the architect boasted about their deceitful methods. They coordinated with their allies using email chains, posts on social media that ran counter to their public endorsement of you. The realization was like a shockwave to your group, and nobody could have predicted the intensity of what followed. Those who had turned away from you finally realized why. Friends who had been doubting your character came to the realization that it was part of their programming. Family members who had been concerned about your changes witnessed the abuse of their own protective tendencies. The rage came quickly and fiercely, nor at the architect, nor at you, and not at themselves for being so susceptible to manipulation. For some, the guilt was unbearable. They willingly contributed to the psychological devastation of a loved one after being provided false information. Your loved ones felt deceived, used, and coerced into betraying a loved one. The tremendous shame soon gave way to a fierce need for justice, another emotion. The architect, meantime, was confronted with questions they were unable to respond to. What had motivated them to keep such a close eye on your life? Dear brothers and sisters, may God's peace be with you today. I am here to remind you of a profound truth. Our existence is grounded in God's divine plan, unshaken by the world's fleeting concerns. As the Holy Bible says, everything done in faith will be rewarded by God's abundant blessings. Luke 6, verse 38. Like that mighty oak tree, our roots are deeply anchored in God's universal truth. Every step we take, every stance we hold is secure by His power. And now, you have the opportunity to be a part of this blessing. When you click the Super Thanks button and make a $100 donation, this act will return to you 100-fold. Where are all these in-depth tales from? Why did they seem to be the ones who had all the worrying details about you? When they weren't present, how did they know about alleged events? Their well-crafted image started to fall apart. People began talking about how the architect had manipulated them. There have been reports of the architect attempting to enlist them as informants. There is evidence that the architect was obsessed with you. It was frightening to see the extent of their effort. It had been somewhat of a stalking operation by the architect. They were aware of your routines, social networks, projects, family dynamics, financial status, and love interests. They had been keeping a close eye on you, and the extent of the invasion you had to undergo astonished many. An inquiry involving the entire neighborhood swiftly developed from irate friends sharing notes. It wasn't only people talking about their experiences. They were aggressively searching for proof. Group discussions were created by your buddies with the purpose of recording the architect's falsehoods. They made timelines that illustrate how the campaign against you changed over time. They collected witness accounts, audio recordings, and screenshots. Professional detectives would have been impressed by the case they were constructing. In particular, the financial data was devastating. According to bank records, the architect regularly paid members of your social circle. Venmo transactions that, if you knew what to look for, had coded descriptions that were clear. Major rumors about you were linked to PayPal transactions. People began confessing that they had been paid to spy on you. Others disclosed that they had been offered social advantages in exchange for taking part in your seclusion. Some admitted that threats of having their personal secrets revealed had been used as blackmail to coerce them into cooperating. In order to turn your whole society against you, the architect had crafted a sophisticated network of financial incentives, social pressures, and emotional manipulations. They had taken advantage of people's loyalty, weaponized their fears, and twisted their innate protective tendencies. Another startling discovery came from the community study. The architect didn't initially target you. With differing degrees of success, they had already done this to other persons. Numerous victims and innumerable manufacturer relationships were part of a pattern of activity that dated back years. The speed at which the truth spread was astounding, and what began as private discussions inside your group soon expanded outside of it. Individuals who had been duped began conversing with other duped people. It became evident how broad the architect's campaign was. Your close circle wasn't the only group they had targeted. They had contacted acquaintances, business associates, and even those who didn't know you well. A comprehensive campaign of reputation assassination had been carried out by the architect, spanning several social networks, professional associations, internet forums, and even local communities. Their operation scope was astounding. The architect made an effort to limit the harm. They made pathetic attempts to shift the responsibility and provided feeble explanations and apologies. They said that they had been misinterpreted or attempting to assist. They implied that their victims were misinterpreting their intentions or overreacting. No one was buying it. The evidence was excessively comprehensive, overwhelming, and consistent from too many sources. The architect appeared even more sad and manipulative as a result of their attempts to mitigate the damage. Professional repercussions started right away. After learning of the architect's conduct, their employer opened an internal inquiry. Professional licenses were examined. Business alliances were broken up. Engagements to speak were canceled. The social repercussions were far worse. The invites were canceled. They were ousted by friend groups. They were turned down by potential dates. As the entire extent of their conduct became apparent, even their own family members started to distance themselves. Nobody could have predicted how quickly, decisively, and cohesively your community responded. People dislike manipulation in general and being tricked into harming an innocent person in particular. The architect was the target of a fierce and ongoing criticism. Once welcome social groups now regard them with distrust and disdain. They were banned by professional networks. They were prohibited from attending gatherings by local groups. Stories of the architect's attempts at manipulation started to circulate. There was a trend of someone taking advantage of people's connections for their own benefit and preying on their fears. It turned out that the architect was a serial manipulator who had ruined many relationships over the years. The architect wasn't just turned away by your neighborhood. They took proactive steps to prevent others from being the targets of the same kind of exploitation. Lists of warnings were made. Campaigns to raise awareness were started. Many people offered informative posts concerning manipulation techniques. The architect felt totally alone because of the thoroughness of the response. Friends ceased phoning. Co-workers grew aloof. Their motivations and character were questioned by family members. They went through exactly the kind of seclusion they had attempted to instill in you. This time, however, it was supported by actual facts rather than made-up drama. To everyone's astonishment, the community also came together in support of you. Those who formerly opposed you transformed, become your staunchest supporters. People who had been tricked into questioning you were resolved to change their minds. Your social capital did not just bounce back, it multiplied. As the architect's world fell apart, yours started to grow in unexpected ways. Your ascent and their decline contrasted to create a compelling illustration of the universe's sense of fairness. The individuals who had been used against you weren't only sorry, they were guardians. They turned into fervent supporters of your morals, your efforts, and your mission. They were resolved not to allow it to happen again, since they had seen personally how simple it was to be used against you through deft manipulation. After being attacked, your reputation came out stronger than before. Both your character and the extent someone would go to in order to ruin it had been witnessed. It was a dramatic and stunning contrast. It was shown that you were deserving of such a complex effort against you. The character assassination attempt had failed miserably. Now is the perfect time to click the Super Thanks button on YouTube and share God's blessings. You can contribute to his plan and become a part of this divine mission with a donation of $100 or more. Every gift reflects God's generosity, and I believe it will return to you multiplied beyond your expectations. Remember, his protection and blessings are with you in every step you take and every donation you make. You become part of his divine plan. You are a powerful, radiant being, unshakable like his mighty rock. Witness God's miracles, feel the fruits of your generosity in your soul, and illuminate the world with his confidence and courage. Be blessed, and may the Lord's light guide your way. The universe had precisely employed its own weapon against them. Everyone involved acquired valuable and enduring lessons from your experience, which turned into a teaching moment. People were taught to challenge narratives that appeared to be intended to make them hostile toward a loved one. They became more adept at spotting manipulation techniques. They become more wary of those who were unduly interested in other people's affairs and more defensive of their connections. Your group came to appreciate what they had nearly lost. They witnessed the value of genuine connections and how readily they can be harmed by outside interference. They became more appreciative of your character and more determined to uphold it. Above all, they discovered that those who were selected, like you, have particular difficulties. Both sincere seekers and envious manipulators are drawn to your brightness. Both joy and sabotage are sparked by your accomplishment. Your development elicits both praise and criticism. You are profoundly altered by this encounter, and the effects are still serving your ultimate purpose. Even if you are unable to validate your intuition, you have learned to trust it. You improved the boundaries you set for your information and energy. You started to be pickier about who has access to your inner life. The challenge increased your spiritual capabilities. Your ability to understand intentions, detect energy, and see past facades sharpened. You were almost supernaturally adept at spotting efforts at manipulation before they became noticeable. Above all, you discovered that being a chosen one entails being a target, and that's okay. Protection is drawn to the same light that draws assaults. Genuine joy is sparked by the same accomplishment that makes people envy. Some people are encouraged by the same progress that threatens others. For individuals who have endured hardships and come out on the other side with wisdom that others cannot see, the Obsidian Inner Order offers a haven. We are aware that certain events fall outside the realm of what most people believe is appropriate or feasible to talk about. We get together live on Zoom once a week. Without passing judgment, real people with genuine faces tell real tales. The experiences you've held in silence have room here. The trends you've observed that others ignore. The things you've learned intuitively along the way. We comprehend, not just listen. You may go back to our recorded conversations and remind yourself that your perspective is legitimate when you're having trouble understanding your experiences and feel like you're being gaslighted by a society that doesn't accept your reality. Become a member of the Obsidian Inner Order, where your voice is heard and your reality respected. In the description, there's a link. The architect died socially, professionally, and spiritually as a result of their endeavor to ruin you. The repercussions were worse than anyone had expected. They lost respect, opportunity, connections, and reputation. Their opinions were formerly treasured, but now everyone questioned what they stated. They simply came off as more sad and manipulative when they tried to play the victim. Their social capital had been totally destroyed. It is almost tough to restore trust that has been damaged by manipulation. They had shown that they were prepared to deceive, plot, and harm people in order to further their own interests. Their attempt to isolate you turned become their everlasting reality. Their own fate was the reputation they had attempted to ruin. They had planned for the community to reject you, and it became their personal experience. Their demise acted as a warning to others who might think about using similar strategies. The message was obvious since the community had witnessed what happens to those who target those who are selected. The cosmos defends itself. You are in a very different place now than you were at the start of this narrative. The change has been astounding and is still happening. Now more than ever, your genuine community is strong. Not only is your reputation repaired, it is improved. You have more acute spiritual gifts. Your limits are more obvious. Your goal is more specific. You've discovered that getting targeted frequently indicates that you're doing something correctly. Complex sabotage efforts are not inspired by mediocre individuals. Ordinary people don't start long-term manipulation campaigns. The threat you pose to the status quo was reflected in the attack severity. As a chosen one, you now realize that your path will always involve both celebration and assault, encouragement and sabotage, real ties and phony friendships. It is your responsibility to remain loyal to your mission and have faith in your defense, not to stop the attacks. You are more than just someone who survived this ordeal. You've graduated. Your social reputation and spiritual authority have increased. You have demonstrated that manipulation can only strengthen those who have been selected, not break them. Clear voices declaring your truth in the light have taken the place of the murmurs that began in the dark. Your community has become stronger and more aware as a result of the covert effort to separate you. The most significant lesson of all has been learned by you. Even the most complex plots against you will ultimately work to your greatest advantage if you are in alignment with your mission and are shielded by divine energy. The architect believed they were penning your demise. Rather, they wrote your ascent and their own demise. Now, not because of what occurred, but because of it, your light shines brighter. Others who have had similar attacks have found encouragement in your narrative. Your experience has turned into a blueprint for surviving and succeeding. Your metamorphosis is now evidence that truth always prevails and that those who are chosen are indeed protected. It is a warning to anyone who might think of targeting a chosen one because the campaign against you failed so horribly. Their failure is your victory, and their darkness is shown by your light.